Supergirl spends 2 hours telling Ruthie that killing Krem won't heal her, that revenge will give her nothing but a lifetime of grief, that being good isn't the same as giving people what they deserve, and then Kara kills Krem. I've seen the film twice now, and on the second viewing, sitting with everything I already knew about how it ends, that contradiction just doesn't smooth out. It got louder. Because the more you pay attention to what the film is actually saying about trauma, about grief, about what separates Kara from the darkness that she's carrying, the more that ending feels like a betrayal of the film's own best instincts. Now, my verdict on the film hasn't changed since my first review, link in the description if you missed it, but you don't need it to follow what I'm about to say. What has changed is how clearly I can see exactly why this film falls short of what it was trying to be. And I think you deserve to know exactly why. Going in on a second viewing, I paid closer attention to the things that nagged at me the first time around. And what I found was that the problems didn't smooth out, they got sharper. The first thing I want to talk about, and I didn't really talk about it as much in my first review, is the Ruthye and Kara relationship. Because on paper, this is the entire movie. Two broken people from shattered worlds finding something in each other that neither of them expected. That's the comic book's whole reason for existing. And on the screen, I just didn't feel that. Watching it on a second time, knowing exactly where their relationship was going, I kept waiting for that moment where I believed in these two people together. And it never quite came. The scenes were there, the dialogue is there, but the emotional connection between them never fully lands. And when the film asks you to believe that Kara would make a life-altering decision for Ruthie in the final act, a decision that we will get to in a minute, that lack of connection makes the whole ending harder to earn. The second thing I noticed was the CGI, specifically Kara in flight. This is a $170 million film, and there are moments, particularly her facial rendering in zero gravity and in deep space, that looked rushed, visibly unfinished. For a character whose power and freedom is supposed to be expressed through flight, that's not a small problem. It took me out of the film repeatedly on my second viewing in ways I'd partially forgotten the first time around. And I don't think these are nitpicks, these are symptoms of the same underlying issue, a film that was assembled under pressure and didn't quite have enough time to become what it was trying to be. I think, what if this was a TV show and had more episodes and more time I think that would have actually improved a lot of these problems that I'm talking about. And that's before we even get to who is actually responsible for the film's most divisive additions, because it turns out the story of what went wrong here is more complicated and more revealing than I realized when I wrote my first review. There was a scene filmed for this movie where Krem explains his backstory, where we learn he was abused as a child, where we understand, not excuse, but understand what shaped him into the person he became. And that scene was cut. That one editorial decision broke two things simultaneously. It broke the villain, because without that context, Krem is exactly what the film makes him feel like. A blank, undifferentiated evil. A guy who does terrible things for no discernible reason. I've heard the argument that he was never supposed to be this traditional big bad, that his casual, mundane cruelty is the point, and I get that reading, but even a villain who operates as a force of nature rather than a character needs something to make you feel the weight of his presence. Without that backstory, Krem is just a visual. He's not a threat, he's an obstacle. And it broke the ending, in my opinion, because if you don't understand what made Krem, you can't fully feel what it cost Kara to kill him. The film spends 2 hours building toward a moment of moral reckoning, and then executes that moment without the context that would have made it land. Kara killing Krem is supposed to mean something. It's supposed to be the hardest choice she's ever made, but you can't feel the weight of a sacrifice when the thing being sacrificed against doesn't register as dangerous enough to warrant it. And I don't think this is a writing problem. Anna Nagara wrote that scene. It existed. Someone decided to cut it, and that decision, made somewhere in those countless test screenings and editorial sessions, quietly unraveled the film's most important moment. In my first review, I argued that this film felt like someone trying to do James Gunn without actually being James Gunn. And I still stand by that, but I need to update that a little bit. After the film came out, writer Anna Nagara gave an interview where she confirmed something that stopped me cold. Lobo wasn't her creative choice. It was an assignment. These are her words. That was given to me. That was like my assignment. We want Lobo in the movie. And director Craig Gillespie confirmed that the final battle needle drop, Jimmy Eat World's The Middle, was James Gunn's personal pick, chosen from roughly 45 songs tested against that scene. And I was thinking about that as I was watching it. I was like, who made these choices for the needle drops? in this movie, because the movie and the trailer have different ones, and it felt a little James Gunny, and I knew he didn't direct the movie, only produced it, so that explains that. But let's be precise about what that means. The two most crowd-pleasing additions to this film, the ones not in the Tom King comic, the ones I described in my first review as the film reaching for external support instead of trusting its own story, those were James Gunn's direct contributions. This wasn't a film that failed because James Gunn wasn't there. It's a film that got Gunn in all the wrong places. He wasn't shaping the story from the inside. He was adding spectacle from the outside. Lobo shows up as an assignment. The final song lands like a decision made in an editing bay, and the result is a film that has Gunn's fingerprints on it in its most divisive moments, while lacking his voice in the moments that actually needed it the most. The humor and the heart that made Superman feel alive, that's James Gunn's writing and directing. Every frame to be a singular vision. What we got here is a film where the most recognizably Gunn elements feel bolted on. And the needle drop that he personally chose, the one that multiple critics have called jarring and tonally dissonant, is the clearest example of what happens when a filmmaker's instincts are applied from the outside rather than embedded from within. Now, make no mistake, Gunn was present in this film, just in all the wrong ways. Before I wrap this up, I want to address something that's happening in the conversation right now, because I think this does matter. There are accounts out there that spent months hyping this film, building their brand on DCU excitement, who are now making videos saying audiences are being too harsh, that critics got it wrong, that people just don't appreciate what this movie is trying to do. And I want to be careful here, because some of that is true. There are legitimate defenses of this film. I've made some of them myself. Millie Alcock, the emotional core, and some of the hatred has nothing to do with the actual film. But there's a difference between a genuine defense and damage control. And what I'm seeing from some corners of this conversation look a lot more like the latter. Accounts that built their credibility on DCU hype, now protecting that investment instead of giving honest takes. That's not criticism, that's brand management. I like this movie. I saw it twice. I wanted more from it. And I think saying that plainly, without either dunking on it or overselling it, is the most useful thing I can do for you as someone who watches this channel. The honest middle is the hardest place to stand right now, but it's the only place worth being. So here's where I land after 2 viewings, a lot of research, and a lot of sitting with this film. My verdict hasn't changed. I liked it. I didn't love it. But it has gotten clearer. Supergirl is a film with genuinely great instincts that kept getting overruled. The instinct to let Kara be messy and broken and real, overruled by the need to add Lobo and Superman cameos and crowd-pleasing needle drops. The instinct to let the Ruthye relationship be the heart of the story, overruled by a pacing that never gives it the room to breathe. The instinct to make Krem's cruelty mean something, overruled by the decision to cut the very scene that would have given him dimension. And the instinct to end on a moment of genuine moral reckoning, undermined by the fact that the film didn't build the emotional foundation that moment required. Millie Alcock is still great. Her performance is still really good. And I believe that the best version of Kara Zor-El on screen is somewhere ahead of us, in a film that trusts her the way that this one couldn't quite manage. Hopefully, Man of Tomorrow. But I've seen people defend this ending by saying Kara carries the burden so Ruthye doesn't have to, that she kills Krem as an act of love and protection. And I want to be honest, that's a genuinely beautiful reading, but a beautiful reading of an ending that isn't the same as an ending that earns it. For that argument to land emotionally, you need to believe in Kara and Ruthie's bond deeply enough to feel the sacrifice. And the film is rushed in places, patchworked in others, missing a scene that would have made all the difference. It just never quite builds that belief. It never quite gels together. That's the difference between what Supergirl is and what it could have been. Not a failed movie, a compromised one. And the difference matters, because the story it was trying to tell deserved better than the circumstances it was made in allowed for. What do you think? Have you seen Supergirl? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I am really interested to hear which side of the fence do you fall on.